I fully anticipate greatness from Super Mario Party Jamboree. Better than the N64 era, better than the GameCube era, and I try not to think about the majority of the Wii, and don't even get me started on Wii U games. And honestly, even when discounting those, it might not even be close. Point is, after watching the latest gameplay trailers and all of the previews I could find, I think very highly of Jamboree. Here's why. But first, why don't you show the like button some love, and while you're down there, you might as well leave a comment with your thoughts on Super Mario Party Jamboree before it comes out. One of my earliest videos on this channel was a rant about the state of Mario Party during the Wii and Wii U era. Back in those days, they were so focused on trying to reinvent the wheel that they completely lost the plot on most of what made Mario Party fun to begin with. Fast forward a little bit with the Nintendo Switch, and we started to see signs of life right out of the gate. Super Mario Party returned to the classic formula, but even that wasn't quite there given the shrunken scope of each board in comparison to most other Mario Party games. I will say it slightly redeemed itself late in its life with the free online multiplayer update. That said, it happened a bit too late, and it didn't really address the core of what that game was missing at the end of the day. Take two on Switch was Mario Party Superstars, and while this was so close to everything the last game should have been, there wasn't much new that could make this game stick, especially given the fact that we already have easy access to the full classics through the Switch Online expansion pack. It was definitely an inherent step up. It'd be hard for a game including the greatest hits of a franchise's history to not be, but that alone at the same time could never amount to a game that surpasses those individual games. Originality goes a long way. Now with Super Mario Party Jamboree, on the other hand, this addresses every problem that spawned from that unfortunate Wii and Wii U era, and it doesn't take the missteps of the Nintendo Switch attempts. First, it addressed my original biggest complaint. It wholeheartedly supports online play for the full Mario Party experience. As I mentioned, Nintendo did eventually come around to allowing Mario Party Online, but up until now, the only new boards playable in this way were the far less ambitious Super Mario Party board. And there were definitely some fun, interesting ideas to those games' boards, don't get me wrong. The problem is these ideas were limited to one, maybe if you stretch it, two concepts per board. Jamboree's boards, on the other hand, are sprawling and have a lot of different unique mechanics that are themed to each individual board, and luckily, from what we can see, none of these mechanics are in direct opposition to the appeal of the game, like the Wii and Wii U era. For instance, one of the new boards does feature the player in cars, but unlike Mario Party 9 and 10, it's not one shared vehicle, so each player still controls their individual paths. There's a mall stage that ups the shop diversity like crazy. There's a stage with a giant wiggler that rotates the progression of the board, and more. Every stage has a large-scale central gimmick and several other smaller quirks that help keep each game you play on them dynamic, which I think increases replayability by a lot, not to mention the over 100 mini games, both new and classic alike, the vast majority of which being new, by the way, that mix traditional controls and motion, something I understand some people may groan about, but I think adds to the fun of Mario Party at the end of the day. I'm here for the wackiness, and as long as the controls feel responsive or accurate to the intended experience, they are more than okay with me. Beyond this, online play season upgrade I think also should have been there from the start. Random matchmaking. Sometimes getting a full group of players is a chore and you just want to throw some randoms into the mix. I'm glad Jamboree finally makes this possible for the Mario Party franchise. Jamboree also adds some improvements to the franchise that I personally didn't expect, but they're all welcome additions either way. For instance, a much lauded addition would have to be the inclusion of Jamboree buddies, which, much like allies in Super Mario Party, help the player that has teamed up with them. However, in this game, they double the opportunity for doing things like buying items and stars, as well as afford the player powers that vary depending on the character of the Jamboree buddy, beyond just being a different dice block. Personally, I was not a fan of allies in Super Mario Party because they have crazy potential to drastically skew the game in favor of the player with the most buddies for the entire duration of the game. And more often than not, the way you obtain them is essentially random. Jamboree buddies, on the other hand, are attempting to rectify justify this by first and foremost needing to be won in a minigame. They only last 3 turns and they can be stolen by enemy players. So at least in theory, they should change hands a decent amount and generally be less dominant because of how relatively difficult they are to get and keep. On the topic of buddies, characters in Mario Party aren't typically a huge concern for me. Obviously, it is a Mario Party game and the point is to be able to play as a Mario character you enjoy, but I haven't really found myself feeling like past Mario Party games lacked characters per se. Maybe that's because characters are mechanically the same, barring the exclusive dice in Super Mario Party that I again feel mixed about. Either way, Mario Party Jamboree has 22 characters, which for some people I'm sure is very exciting. I personally probably just main Ninja or maybe Pauline. Also, Super Mario Party Jamboree is following in Smash's footsteps and allowing a level of customization we haven't seen before that will allow more competitive players to enjoy the game more with its pro mode. I haven't really engaged with this side of Mario Party at all, but I will say there's definitely times when I think things like random bonus stars actively detract from the fun. Limiting the amount of bonus stars awarded at the end to 1 and narrowing the criteria for what nets players that star to something players can be intentional about makes them feel a lot better balanced for people that are playing to win in a group of people with comparable skill and sensibilities. And I am always here for that. And there are other parameters that are specific to pro mode that could be interesting, like a 12-turn limit, every player starting the game with an item, limited inventories for stores, and a few other things that increase the need for strategy while decreasing the impact of sheer luck. A big theme of Jamboree to me is expanding on replayability, and the inclusion of these rule changes I think fall in line with that perfectly. This could be just me and the people I usually play Mario Party with, but the non-Mario Party mode game types usually don't get much play. However, I do think this time around things may change at least a little bit. The additional mode that I think will see the least playtime though from me is the single player campaign. I know there's a contingent of gamers that don't have people to play multiplayer games with or even straight up refuse to do so. They'll probably love this mode. I personally don't see the value in playing Mario Party alone though. I would rather play something else entirely, but that could just be a me thing. On the complete opposite end of this spectrum, Jamboree introduces a suite of modes that allow up to 20 player online multiplayer. One is a battle royale type experience where every player competes to take the most laps around the board before the game ends. And then there's an 8-player cooperative mode where every player teams up to take down an evil imposter Bowser. There are also a few other modes that are local only, which means I personally won't get much use out of, barring family and friends in my area wanting to play, which, to be real, is unlikely. Smash and Mario Kart have a stranglehold in that area I don't see lessening anytime soon, and not for this game. For the sake of mentioning and sharing some thoughts on them, the motion control rhythm mode is something that seems fun. If I get the chance to play it in a natural setting with people that aren't as down on motion as I feel a lot of the gamer crowd tends to be, I would love to check it out because I personally do enjoy these modes. Big WarioWare Smooth Moves fan. And there's a mini game mode that I don't think I'll mess with much either, since I'd rather play the mini games in the context of the main mode, but who knows, maybe if it unlocks anything I may have to check it out. A major complaint I still hold for Mario Party in the modern era is Nintendo's refusal to support the games with meaningful DLC. Obviously, Super Mario Party was a minor exception with the online play update I already mentioned, essentially reviving the game in the COVID era, and that's definitely still worth applauding, but I think the more impactful DLC that could keep Mario Party games exciting for much longer would be additional minigames and boards. For what it's worth, the phrasing for the boards in the Mario Party Jamboree overview trailer makes me think there's a possibility for Nintendo to change that, but there's no way to be sure. I always thought that DLC, paid or otherwise, would be a no-brainer move for them to make with Mario Party since their first game on Switch, even more with Superstars. And I'm hesitant to still say Jamboree seems to have gotten so much right that DLC feels plausible, because I have been burned with those aforementioned examples before. Mario Party games frequently sport what I would say is a modest amount of boards to play, and that always dooms them to feel repetitive sooner than most other party games in my opinion. And this is where DLC could come in clutch. Imagine a booster pack adjacent expansion that could add a mix of additional new boards and mini games as well as classics. Even if the majority of the content included were remastered classics from the past, I would immediately buy it, and I'm sure most people still watching this would as well. Regardless, I already feel confident in saying Super Mario Party Jamboree has a strong case for being the best game in the franchise, but if it's even supported with a year of post-launch content, it would easily beat out the greats that have remained untouchable since the N64 and GameCube era. Thank you to Redirect's first ever executive producer Trev L. Steinberg and all of these other great names you see scrolling on the screen for keeping this channel afloat. To join them, head on over to shop.watchredirect.com to be added to the credits, as well as receive Nintendo inspired merch, free Twitch subs, early access to these videos, and more. Most importantly, if you watch this video this far, you must be excited for Nintendo's upcoming games. You definitely should get subscribed to see all of the other videos I'll make on this and the rest of the games on the way. Okay, that's it for me. See you in the next video.